Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me some time with you this morning to share a bit about what we're doing at Johns Hopkins Medicine. As Tony mentioned, I've been with Johns Hopkins for about 14 years now. Our office is in charge of strategic workforce development for the institution for Johns Hopkins Medicine. So I'm going to run through some slides very quickly, but what I'd like to say about the work in the space of returning citizens and reentry, it's not a program for us, it's the way we do business, and we don't sort of isolate it as this one-off. So what you're going to see in my presentation is really the work that we're doing for anyone who might be disenfranchised from employment or from the opportunity to grow and thrive. And so we try to make a concerted effort to do this work and not just necessarily single out certain groups, while recognizing needs of special groups and adjusting our work. So I'm going to describe a bit about Hopkins, because I think it's very poignant here. Our benefactor, Johns Hopkins, I actually saw the directives that he gave to the Board of Trustees when he established the university and the health system. He was a man that believed in universal health care, even way back when, and so really directed the Board of Trustees to make sure from the hospital's perspective to take care of those who cannot afford the cost of health care at no charge, and maybe charge a little bit more to those who can, so that and I actually saw his actual writing with that, so that kind of really impressed me and sets the tone, I think, for what we do at the institution. When I usually do these talks, I tell employers, if you are an employer in a city who realizes for whatever the reason that the soil that you're planted in and the work that you're doing in that city is not fruitful for you, that you're just going to pick up stakes and go, my conversation with you this morning is not going to make sense. This is a presentation about employers who are committed to the communities within which they do their business, and knowing and recognizing that as an employer, as a company, you cannot thrive if your community is not thriving. So this is part of the letter that was sent, and it was very specific in a lot of areas. And this presentation will be available to everyone, and I know I have a certain amount of time, so I'm going to kind of go through this very quickly. But he talked about that. So a bit about Johns Hopkins. We have about 48,000 employees. We're the largest private employer in the state of Maryland between the university and the health system, which are separate employers, but still one Hopkins. And here are some of our reach globally with Johns Hopkins International, and then with the university campuses. A little bit about Baltimore. We have a little over 600,000 residents in Baltimore City proper. That's down about 300,000 over the past few decades. And so we're in a city that has some interesting challenges and opportunities. So I just wanted to provide you with some statistics about where we are and what the conditions are of some of the folks that are living in our areas. So we recently in the U.S. World News and Report was listed as the most dangerous city in the United States. I don't think so. I live there, and not that we don't have challenges like many other large cities, although we don't have the population of large cities, so that's where it becomes, as like New York or Chicago, and that's where those numbers become a little bit daunting. But we have some real issues in the city that we are trying to get a hold of. And I share this because as folks are coming home, as we're working with individuals, our office and the work that we do, again, there's plenty of work to be done. And so we're trying to make sure that we're reaching everyone. This was our former president. He just retired. Our new president has come in. And so just the mandate or the mission that is a part of who what the institution and who the institution is about making sure that we provide obviously care and make sure the health and well-being of our city is where it should be, which is no small feat in and of itself, but also making sure that folks have the means to take care of themselves. So our economic inclusion initiative, which started in 2015, called HopkinsLocal, is an initiative where we have set not quotas, but goals or targets in the area of hiring, procurement, construction, and investments. So these were our initial goals. And we were very public about them. So we're making sure that we're accountable. And it's really caused us to look at how we do business, especially between the university and the health system, and create some opportunities to remove artificial barriers from keeping individuals from gaining access to us. So our first year results, we did, well, I'm focused in the higher area because that's my area, HR. So we had a goal of 40% over the 3 years, and with just a bit of fine tuning and really, again, removing some barriers that we didn't realize or just started to make sure as we were uncovering how to work across the enterprise. We hired 43% of, in the first year. We're at 45% in the second year, and I left my iPad up there. I was going to share a little bit more, but I know the 45% in the second year, which those results are out. So that represents, there's 16 zip codes that we have targeted in Baltimore City that have higher than the overall city and state unemployment, those kinds of statistics. And so we've targeted those areas for this effort. So this represents 309 hires this year from those targeted zip codes in certain entry level positions that may have low barriers to entry. Of that 309, 113 were returning citizens. This year, we're about at 45%. That's 300 and about 35 hires, and 198 are returning citizens just in those positions. It's not all of the positions that we have within the health system or the university. There's far more, and I'll have some stats to talk about that. So our strategic workforce development is three-pronged. It's really four, but three-pronged approach. We provide services for our entry-level incumbents. So once you're hired into Hopkins with the benefits and the health care and the educational advancement opportunities, which is in part what our office does, we target our entry-level employees who may still be struggling with some barriers, but they're employed, they're earning a steady income, and we're trying to help them grow that income. We work with our community-based organizations to support those individuals in our community who may have barriers to employment, may have been intermittently unemployed for an extended period of time or unemployed for an extended period of time, may have disabilities or what have you, but we specifically work with community-based organizations to find those individuals in our communities who, with some support, which is what we really want to impress here are the employees that we need in our organization to help us do the work that we do better. So all of this for me on my side of the organization, it's about patient care. And we're a 24/7 operation in healthcare. You can't afford to import everyone when you're working in a 24/7 operation. You want the person that lives 2 blocks away or down the road to be able to come in if there's a blizzard or something like that happening to help take care of the patients. And we know that there are a plethora of talented individuals right in our footprint that, for all intents and purposes, because are either unconscious bias or for whatever, we don't see, but they're there, and they're exactly the people that we need to help us do the work that we do better. And then our more long-term approach is youth. So we have programs that target youth, primarily to expose them to the world of healthcare and academia, and also supporting the notion of lifelong learning. When you work in workforce development, I've recognized that learning doesn't stop. And sometimes people say, okay, when I graduate college or when I get this job, I'm going to be in. And what we have found and what we're seeing now is if you don't keep current with your skills, with what the trends are, your job is going to evolve with needs that you are unable to match because you have not walked lockstep with the changes and the evolution of what's happening there. And so we're finding that, and we do that and that's why we target our entry-level employees as well, encouraging them to kind of stay current, because you'll blink 2 times and your job is way over there, and you're unable to, and now you're facing a potential reduction in force. And things don't only happen internally where the organization may get technology or different things that change the face of the way work is done, but credentialing bodies change the requirements for doing jobs, and then all of a sudden here you are scrambling to get the skills that will enable you to stay employed, much less advanced. So really trying to help folks understand that. We work with talent acquisition, our learning and organizational development, and government affairs. We operate somewhere in that sphere and have the opportunity to really start working with the administrators and directors within our different entities to kind of say, what's coming down the pike? What are you seeing? Are you getting equipment or technology that's going to really impact this group of jobs or these individuals? What do we need to do so we can start tapping people on the shoulder now to prepare them? So, and this is basically, we have coaches in our area, in our office, that works with our incumbents and community folks. And so here I just described a bit of that. We do assessments. People don't really understand and know their workforce. Not just as, can you do this job, but who are you? What are your skills? What are the potential? Where are your innate skills that you may not even be aware of? And really try to look at employees holistically so that, and these are just a handful of assessments that really freak people out, but it's like, this is not something to kind of bar you from access. This is to try to help provide you with knowledge and information so that you can expand your access. So I kind of like to consider ourselves, we're not the gatekeepers, we're the gate openers. We kind of keep that door open. We'll prop our foot over here to help folks who normally might have the door closed in front of them to make sure that things are possible. We have career coaching, and a part of our services for our incumbents who are pursuing education or training or certification in any of our critical skill shortage areas in healthcare. We will pay 2 days of their wages each week until they're completed with that, because our entry-level employees don't have a lot of flexibility in their schedules. If they don't work this shift, they don't get that money, they don't pay the rent, they don't buy food, but they want to grow, and so I have to take classes. So imagine the housekeeper who's trying to become an RN, And we know how labor intensive that education is. There's clinicals, there's lecture, there's lab. And so keep them whole, they work 24 hours in their department, and we'll pay the 16 hours a week for them to go to school. And so imagine a 24/7 operation. If you work 2 12s on a Saturday, you have Monday through Friday to do your schooling because we're paying the other 16. And that helps to accelerate someone's acquisition of knowledge and education that then bumps them up, which often into a pay range that's life-changing money. The coaching is there, tuition is paid for, so this extra piece of support is there to provide some guidance and an extra push to get them into critical shortage areas that we need. We also make sure from our community perspective, keep a couple of jobs that do not require a high school diploma. We keep a couple of jobs that only require 8th grade. It's a strategy that's there by design because we know that there are individuals, for whatever the reason, did not complete high school, but have the work ethic, the attitude, the problem-solving skills, the customer service skills, the things that we really need, the root things that you can't learn in a classroom. I guess some of it, but some of it you can't learn in a classroom. The other things we can teach to help folks be great. And part of the things that we do in terms of specialized training, coordinating those, partnering with external diploma program and doing GEDs. We have a skills enhancement program internally that teaches medical terminology, English as a second language, math and writing and reading tutorials right in-house to help people sort of advance those skills. And our medical terminology courses, they can get college credit from the 2 community colleges there. So a little bit more about our incumbents. This is the nursing program in particular, but we have it for any occupation: medical coding, respiratory therapy, rad techs, surge techs, pharmacy techs. Any job that any of our entities define as a shortage for them, we can put this model in place to help our entry-level folks grow. Uh-oh. Oh, good. Sorry. Tuition reimbursement. I know, right? Tuition reimbursement. We pay for the tuition. After 60 days of employment, you're eligible to start using the tuition benefit. And then we have a dependent child tuition. So anywhere you want to go on the health system side. So it doesn't only have to be at Hopkins. It could be anywhere. We'll pay for the tuition. Our tuition assistance advancement. And they have to pass the classes and all that good stuff. You know, there are things in there, but this is our skills enhancement program that I mentioned. And then we have a partnership with our union, the SEIU 1199, for certifications. For our represented employees, we're able to make sure, because our tuition only pays for degrees. So for certifications, like if you want to become a phlebotomist or our pharmacy tech, some of our trainings, those are certifications. We can pay for that through the Joint Training Council Fund. And then our office, if you're not a union employee, our office will put trainings together very similarly to pay for that for our non-union employees who are making the same amount. So internal programs. Here we are. This is what, sorry, am I doing all right with time? Okay. So here's where we're focusing on who's in our neighborhoods and who are we missing, the talent that's there. And I don't know about you, I'm sure it's very similar here, but we don't like giving up on good talent. If you have talent that we need, and I'm very competitive, we're gonna get you at Hopkins. As opposed to University of Maryland, great partners, we'll do stuff together in the city, but when the push comes to the shove, if that person has a talent, we're gonna try our darndest to get those folks helping us to be a better organization. So why we do it? Again, I talked about our mission and the consistency with the culture of the organization. And I'm from here. I grew up in Brooklyn. So when I went to work at Hopkins, it was palatable. You could feel this. They're inextricably connected, Hopkins and Baltimore. It's the strangest feeling. And so this is very much, keep doing that. This is very much a part of how we do our business. So we ban the box. It's a normal application process. It's all folded into, it's not something separate. It's all folded in. While we do our tracking, it's no different than what anyone else would go through. So someone will apply. They'll go through the process, interview, all of that good stuff, and I'll talk a little bit about how our office works with that and our community-based organizations, because we only work through our community-based organizations. We need to make sure that someone's employer ready. Just need to make sure you have your social security number, you got a steady address, you have a phone number that's working, an email address, all of those things, because we're not trying to duplicate what services are in the city. We're trying to make sure that we're leveraging those resources. So someone will apply, go through the process. The manager goes, we want to hire this person. A tacit offer of employment is extended. So or a conditional offer with 4 sort of hurdles that you have to go through. Obviously, the background, the health screening, the educational verification, and the references. That's everybody. And so we then ask permission to kind of run this check. It's very important that everyone knows exactly what's on their record. We were talking about this last night. Some folks don't know. Some things that are expunged, hey, it's right on there. It's not missing. It's not shielded. None of that. It's all there. So that's a whole nother set with criminal background reporting and what happens. And then in Maryland, we have an online service called the Maryland Judiciary Case Search. So you can just type in anyone's name and see what's there. It's very confusing. How is it updated? Is it accurate? All of those things come into play. So we do a background. We have, and I think this is the key to the work and the commitment that we have an individual who reviews all of the backgrounds, the ones that come back with a record, does the check for all of those positive hits, and does that assessment. Is what's on this person's background going to be a risk or a challenge for this job to which they have applied? Period. And this is someone who is well versed within the judicial system, so they know what they're looking at. They know when they're reading a report that this doesn't make sense, and knows the questions to ask and what to investigate, and to see things that really don't mean anything on the report and do that clear assessment. I've seen I'll show outcomes of some of the reports that we've done, and I've looked at these background reports, and I'm like, what is this? You really don't know what you're looking at. And so we're turning away really good people based on errors and problems in another aspect of this work. And then if they clear, that information stays in HR. Now, if the person discloses it themselves, that's up to them, but that stays in HR. And so we protect that individual, their privacy, and we're protecting ourselves as well in that. And I think that's one of the better ways, because our hiring managers are like, don't really care. If HR and security has cleared you, welcome aboard. That's it. And we're doing our due diligence there. And so we're not lowering standards. We've had to tell folks, you know what, you're not quite ready at this time, or not for this position. So that person works in talent acquisition. There are times when he's like, this person is really great, but they can't work in this job. So he'll kick them over to our office with our coaches, and then we'll work with them to look at other opportunities within the health system and possibly the university so that they can get employed. Because imagine the hurdles of coming through. We receive on the health system side between Johns Hopkins Hospital, on average, 10,000 applications a month. So that's, again, because to get through the hoops of all of that, when you get a hiring manager that says, yes, I want this person, 9 times out of 10, there's a variety of other hiring managers that will say the same thing. And so we want to make sure that we keep the person within. So the guidelines that we do for criminal backgrounds is what the EEO has. And our legal team, we've been doing this for years because they kind of keep an eye out on lawsuits and these little skirmishes legally that are happening around the country. And then they come back, our senior counsel says, okay, this is what's happening here. How are we measuring up? What are we doing? What lawsuits are happening, just to make sure that we're in a safe space. And so these are all of the things that we look at. So a lot of the CBOs, when we do our partnerships with them, are like, what's the formula? I said, we're not, the moment you put someone in a box, you completely remove the opportunities for the things that are outside the box. So it's truly, they hate when I say this, but it's a case-by-case basis. No two snowflakes are alike, no two people are, and their situations and their circumstances aren't either. And so we need to do the work of, let's look at what's happened with you as a human being and your situation, and how does that fare with what we need to have happen here. So customized training. And I'll talk about our partnerships, and this is just a handful of organizations, so our studies. So 2000 to 2005, we did a little sample just to see, okay, what's happening with folks. It wasn't the full-blown of everyone that was hired, and this was the result. Because of the screening, we were really kind of looking at how is this working out? Are we screening properly? Are folks thriving? Are they staying? What's that? So it was a very simple kind of sample. Second follow-up, 2003 to 2006, and so we found that 43% low, and this is the information that kind of came through as we looked at our termination rates and reasons in our HRIS system. So we're like, okay. So this was the study that I served as the person that pulled all of the data for. It took a while because then you had to, we switched background check companies. So I was pulling stuff from Pinkerton and then pulling stuff from Universal over the span of time. And some folks had multiple issues and who's still here and all of our different systems, but we finally got it. And we worked with an organization, the Jacob Franz Institute, that has a partnership with the city to do wage analysis in the state. So what we found was we have stayed consistent. We hire, about anywhere from 5 to 10% of our hires annually have a criminal background or are returning citizens. And so in that span of time, we hired about 4,500 people. And we had 459 who were returning. So when in HR, the KSAs, the knowledge, skills, and abilities that you're bringing in, so there's no disparity in the wages. And we did a comparison between folks who were hired at that time without a criminal background and those who did have a criminal background. And some of this was also to look at where do we need to direct some of our services. So young African-American males who were hired, we need to kind of really look and work with them a little bit more closely. We had from infractions to felonies hired. We had folks hired in entry-level positions, in finance, IT, in clinical spaces, all the way through. So it's really, again, our case-by-case analysis of what are you bringing to the table in terms of your knowledge, skills, and ability, and where does that fit to the job to which you've applied, and how does your criminal background make that possible or not possible, I should say. And so we're due for another one. And we're due for another one to kind of see where we are and see how we're doing with some of the interventions that we wanted to apply based on what we saw here. Because we looked at educational level, we looked at folks who left and if they went somewhere else and earned money. So we knew that if we provided them that first opportunity, that was a good thing. While we would have loved to have kept them, shame on us if we couldn't, but great for them if they went somewhere else and made more money or found a promotion. So kind of looking a little bit more deeply at that. And so I keep saying, I don't know if I should say this since I'm on film, but you know, we go around and really try, especially as a healthcare organization, because that seems to be taboo in the reentry world, like, oh, you're never going to work at a hospital. And there's still some positions for which we have a challenge because the certifying boards that allow for licenses may not. So the RNs, if you can't get a CNA because of your background, then, you know, some of that is, you know, just a hard. So we keep talking about this and challenging that in ways. And I'm not saying do your due diligence, make sure, because no one wins if you really lower standards or do whatever to get someone in just for the numbers. That's not what we're talking about here. But the opportunity to miss out on someone that really can take your service and your work to another level. And these are some of the things that we have found to be helpful. You have to partner with your community-based organizations. You need the leadership of your organization to be a part of the solution. If your leadership, your president, your senior legal counsel, your VP of HR, your VP of security, if they're not on board, it's going to be a hard hill to climb there because, and that, at least from my experience, has been this whole transition from 2000, late 1990s, started with those 4 senior executives saying, okay, we're dealing with a workforce issue here in Baltimore. Where are we missing the boat? And how can we, because we want to make sure that we're still pulling people from the community. And it was those individuals that said, okay, let's really look at what we're doing. The process that we have a program where we have internships for folks who are, have limited work experience, and that's a way that we try to pull in a lot of our returning citizens. We were able to do that from a small grant that we had gotten from the Department of Justice in about 2008 to work with training providers, but they gave it to the employer since we hold the jobs, work with training providers to provide some sort of experience that would create a pipeline. And so when I set that up, I said, well, I definitely don't want to start just pulling people off the street. We really need to work with guiding people to the services that are available to them through the CBOs and then working exclusively with them to make sure that they understand what we're looking for in employees and we can support them so that we're giving them some of the money that we're getting to do the trainings and make sure folks are employer ready, and then we work with our departments to sort of pipeline folks in. And that is the internship program we call it the Transitional Employment Partnership Program, where folks come in and we have, it's a 90-day training, and within the first 4 to 5 weeks, a hiring manager or a supervisor will know this person has it. Let's get them through the process and get them hired. And they pretty much go through the hiring process once they apply to that training. We do the background, we do the health screening, They do a portion of orientation, everything but benefits. 5 weeks later, if they really show their talent and the department wants them, it's also expedited their entree into the process. We help them, our coaches help them with the application, make sure that that's all set, but they've just had a background, they just had their health screening, they just went through orientation about 30 days or 5 weeks earlier, and so we kind of move them along. And then youth. From 4th grade through college, we have different programs. And again, we're dealing with some educational issues with our public school system. So all of this is around mentorship and exposing young people to what's possible in terms of careers, but also reinforcing, like with the 4th graders, we have teams of like someone from radiology and a nursing, and IT might adopt a 4th grade class and go once a month and do activities and things with them. But they go and say, you know, the 4th grade math that you're doing, I do every day. The reading that you're doing, I use in my job every day, so that they know that there's relevance to the things that they're doing and reinforcing lifelong learning. And then at the end of the year, we bring all of the kids. So last week? Last week we had about 170 4th graders, because there were 5 4th grade classes. We all, different schools, they all had their t-shirts, and we took them to the heliport so they can see a helicopter come in. They were in the ambulance. One of our teams in surgery had them scrub in, so they had little scrubs for them. And they did a mini operation, so they had a teddy bear that had candy in there. I should show, we have a film of that. And so they're in there sort of like doing surgery, CPR, just so that they can see what's possible. And we do something similarly middle school, because there's so much happening with middle schoolers, issues that they're dealing with. Excuse me. And so, thank you. Excuse me. I get excited about this stuff. And so, middle schoolers, identity issues, bullying. It's around that time the girls start to drop off with science and math. And so, trying to really intensify the connection. And then we do a summer jobs program for 23 years. Thank you. We're going to serve 450 15 to 20-year-olds and place them in positions across the health system and the university. I do not rest in the summer. I don't take vacation, because you have kids that are going to challenge your policies. Oh, yeah, I can't wear, I can't do this or that. So, and we have a program where we have college peer mentors, because no one's listening to me. But we have college peer mentors that help us administer the program, exemplifying what it means to work at an institution like Hopkins, because you may work in retail, you may work in hospitality, working in an academic research health institution, a little different. And so either you're going to love it or hate it, but it exposes you to the possibilities, and that helps to direct. So that's another study that I'm trying to work on, because we have 24 years of that data. We want to see as a private employer, and we pay for it ourselves. We pay the minimum wages, we find the jobs, we have computer classes that we have the students take, we do professional development sessions on the Fridays. So, yeah, that was then. We're doing 450 because we had 16,500 kids that applied to the city's Youth Works program. So this is our way of really helping the city out, not taking their dollars. So we pay for all 450 of those kids, their wages, minimum wage, placement, and then make sure that the city has our numbers, Maryland Business Roundtable, and helping you. And so imagine what they call opportunity youth, or whatever the name is now, for young people that graduate high school, may not have immediate plans for college. We really, but have shown an aptitude or an interest. We're really able to kind of pull young people in, and now you're working for an employer that's going to pay for your schooling while you're trying to figure out and decide. And so with our summer program, we've done some work with our Career and Technology Education division of our public schools. So we're pipelining high school students that have their CNA. We put a patient care tech course together that we pay for. Their job is to take that patient care tech course, and then we pipeline them for those who want to work in nursing and get into our entry-level nursing position. We're going to do that with pharmacy techs. We're going to do that with construction and facilities. And so that is the strategy where we're trying to leave no stone unturned in really making sure that we're reaching people in our communities who we might otherwise overlook if we weren't paying attention, and continuing to reinforce the importance of lifelong learning. Thank you. And some of that work, and some of it takes a little time. It might be costly, but it's money well spent in the long run. And this is, so much of what we do nowadays is what's happening in this quarter. Did we make that profit? Life isn't like that. Sometimes you have to take the long-term approach and to make these movements so that we have a community that's thriving, where every able-bodied person is contributing to the tax base, because I don't know about you, but I like having my roads paved, and law enforcement and the fire department and all the kinds of things that cities need to have a a good life. And for our institution, attracting talent to your city and to your organization, the community that you're in has to be thriving. And so that's always been the goal and the sort of edict from Johns Hopkins, and this is where we are and what we're doing. So thank you very much. I probably took more time than necessary, but shared a little bit. Thank you.
So we're going to do a few questions. I'm sure there are some. We'll give Yariela a chance to
Get my voice back. Excuse me. Thank you.
But we'd like to take questions. We're going to pass the mic around for questions if there are any.
Thank you. Ooh.
In the back, I'll just sit down.
Thank you. That was such an inspiring presentation. What you were trying to put to words of how clearly Johns Hopkins is connected to the Baltimore community, I think we all heard very clearly. And I think what you set forth today was the experience and the vision of almost 20 years of this commitment. And I don't know about the others in the room, but I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, wow, I would love to have a legal counsel and that person who can read the background checks and all the different things that you've put into place. So I think my question is, knowing what you know, if someone was starting this journey, what would be some of the advice that you would give them?
Thank you. I should probably go back up here, right? I don't need the mic, right? I'm still. So definitely having the leadership. Take inventory of your organization first. Let's be thoughtful about what we're bringing people into, and make sure that you at least have a cadre of folks that get it. That'll be your champions there, because you need champions at all levels of the organization to really make this work. And sometimes there may be one or two individuals that have the understanding and the drive and the vision to do this, but the rest of your team organization isn't quite there yet. So definitely trying to make sure that you have that culture there. And again, I think at Hopkins, because who he was and the values that he had and what he sort of directed the board of directors and the trustees to do, it has permeated through the years. Get support externally. So I always tell, get like your state's attorney, get your philanthropic folks, get some of that leverage externally to sort of be on this sort of posse of folks that will help move the organization. You have to factor this kind of value in the performance reviews, in the compensation, in how folks are evaluated. That's the only way that as you're going in this journey, you kind of make sure that permeates the organization. But take the time to kind of really think and plan that out. Do the research. This is kind of how it worked for us and how it's unfurling. We're still constantly, I love doing things like this because I learn from all the different organizations and different places that are doing things. So go on a tour of different places that are doing this kind of work and make sure that it's not this isolated, thing to the side. It has to be woven into the fabric of who you are, what you are as an organization. So that's why I said, our reentry's in there, but this applies to, let's say, if someone that is autistic, because we partner with organizations that serve adults and young people with autism to see if there's opportunities for employment with us. So that it's woven in that manner. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Because I think we do a lot of work on making sure that the people we bring in are the right folks, that they have everything that's needed. And not that we shouldn't do that. But more often than not, no one's really looking at their house and saying, what am I bringing someone into? And really making sure that the implicit and unconscious biases that permeate how you do business in your organization, that you're at least aware of it, and then starting to kind of address it and reinforce that. And we have them still. We have them, obviously. Our next phase of HopkinsLocal, as we're bringing all of these folks in, is like, okay, so what's happening to them when they're here? And what are the managers and supervisors dealing with? Where? And so we're starting to continue to peel that back. In some instances, we're doing that already because we do our Gallup scores, our employee engagement, and our HCAP scores from the surveys that our patients provide start to give us a sense of what's happening there. Because I don't know about you, but our housekeepers and techs spend more time with our patients than the physicians. And the experience, they're already under duress if they're in the hospital. Sorry, it's not And so the experience that they're having is really in the hands of the folks that are in their rooms constantly. And if these are not happy people, you're not going to have a happy patient. And so starting to look at that data to really see what you're working with. I hope that was helpful. Hi.
I just wanted to, is Joe Phelps still the investigator?
Yes.
I love Joe.
Joe, yes.
So I wanted to make the case, and by the way, I'm Roberta Myers from Legal Action Center. I wanted to make the case about how important, or have you to make the case about how important it is to have an investigator, because Joe's background was in law enforcement, but he's very attuned and aware of what goes on in the community that you all serve and work in. And so how important it is to have someone in that position who's not only trained and understands. I heard him talk one time about how his understanding of how police in their community. At times, you have folks that stack cases.
Yep.
I mean, stack charges.
Yep.
And so unless you're aware
Or
of
that-
certain practices, you wouldn't even know. So when
Right.
you talked about, I didn't want you to kind of skirt over that issue
Yeah,
about
it's
having someone who knows the types of questions to ask, and he
does
serves
that.
as a resource to the HR managers and recruiters to give that understanding. So
He-
why that's important, because I think that that's also to touch on what you were asking about what else do you need inside.
That is, I think, the underpinning of our ability in terms of kicking that gate open and making sure, because he knows what to ask and he's well versed. And more importantly, he gets it. Like, I love Joe because he's not going to compromise the standards, but he also isn't going to bar someone who very well can do the job, and he understands when there's inequities in law enforcement, there's inequities in the judicial system, and he knows when he's looking at something what that is. And he's invaluable. He's the person that says, you know what, we can't really bring this person in, they're not ready yet for this, but can you guys work with this applicant to find something else so that they can get their foot in the door, and then our benefits and things that can support them, and then internally they might be able to transfer. Because once you've had your background check when you're in, you're in. We don't do additional drug screenings, we don't do any of that unless there's a fitness for duty request that comes through. So that, I would say, is a critical role to have someone that knows what they're looking at, and also not only has that knowledge, but understands the other nuances about this work, and understands. That grant that we got from the Department of Justice to open up a pipeline for returning citizens came from our VP of Security. He said to our VP of HR, hey, there's this opportunity where we can kind of do this work in the city, recognizing that, people, who walks on water here? Who's never made a mistake? Who's not, people are not who they are 20 years ago or 30 years ago, however long. People evolve. And so keeping someone trapped somewhere in another prison in this collateral it's not helpful for anyone. Not them, not for us. And all of this work, while it's good-hearted and everything it's about survival for everyone. As an organization, it's in our own self-interest as well to make sure that the community that we're doing business in is thriving as well, because then we thrive also.
Hi, I'm Susan Henson with Memorial Sloan Kettering. Can you tell us more about your department, the size of it, and how you work with talent acquisition?
So I have, it's not a big department, although it's going to get there. It's more than me. So I have 4 coaches, one that's dedicated to the community-based organization, relationship, outreach, but everyone kind of touches everything. I really have room for 5, so I'm looking for another coach. I have a youth program coordinator, a staff assistant, and me. And 4 skills enhancement instructors, part-time. One works 24 hours a week, another 20, and 2 6 hours a week. And everything else we leverage and partner with our CBOs. Now, talent acquisition, so there's a bit of, we kind of look at, we may do some outreach things, they definitely do job fairs and the like. We tend to partner with CBOs with trainings for positions that we need, and start to work, and they do outreach in the community. We start to work with those participants. We'll let talent acquisition know. Here we have a training for patient service coordinators or unit secretaries or what have you. So we'll ask them, but we'll also ask the hiring manager to come to a sort of meet and greet. We like to humanize the process, not just, a piece of paper with someone's name, but come and sit down and meet a person, tell them about what this job is like at Hopkins, and you'll get to chat with them. They can tell you their interests and things like that. And I think that's been very helpful because when you get the hiring manager then tapping the talent acquisition people on the shoulder saying, hey, I met these 5 people at this event. I know they're applying. Can you make sure to send me their resumes or their applications?
So that's coming before the hiring.
Yes. Yes. So we try to create spaces where, and we do that internally too. We do that internally. Now through Project Reach, for example, we have a housekeeper that wants to become an RN. Maybe she wants to be a pediatric nurse. So we have a group, our Ladders in Nursing Career group, that will make sure that that employee shadows people, nurses in pediatrics. One, because when we first started to do this, Reach started out as a $3 million Department of Labor grant. That's how I was hired into Hopkins, to kind of bring that to scale across the enterprise. And we learned that sometimes employees will look at jobs and see how much they make. Oh, I want to do that. And we had someone that says, oh, I want to be a surge tech. Oh, great. We start to get them. And as we delved in a little bit, oh no, I don't like blood. I said, well, this is not the job for you then. Let's regroup. And so we're like, you know what? We need to do a little job shadowing, have the department talk about what it means to do this work. They get to meet the current people in the unit. The unit folks get to meet them. And so it's almost like, we're checking each other out and making sure that I think I want to still do this, and I like the way this feels or looks here. And the department is like, oh my gosh, this is a great person. Yeah, I didn't know, because with 48,000 employees, my gosh. So it really humanizes the process. So we do that for internal transfers, and we make sure that that's the way that we try to bring community folks in.
With one group for plan operations and did an open house.
Yes.
People apply, and then put 12 people in a program, and they're being trained.
Yes.
And we're paying them.
Yes. Yes.
We're doing it on this team, 12 people, you're doing it.
Well, we do it with a lot of different, because depending on the position. So we're doing something with anesthesia now internally and pipelining. So whenever we start to do, when we see with our shortages that we have a need, because Mr. Peterson always, it's growing our own was always sort of an integral part of what we do. So we always make sure that if we have opportunities that we're tapping our entry-level employees as well as working with our partners to get folks in. So.
We're short on time. We want to make sure that we have quick. Is it quick? Yes. It's a quick question, and then turn over to.
Okay. Hi.
Hello.
I'm Dr. Divine Pryor. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for New Leadership on Urban Solutions, a very unique center. We specialize in going after and recruiting formerly incarcerated people to put them on a professional track. So we look for people with master's degrees and PhDs.
Yes.
And what I wanted to ask you is your advocacy work in terms of when you come in contact with a person who is credentialed, but however they're running into all of the collateral damages that come with that. They're highly skilled, you're impressed with them. I mean, everything seems to be right, but the block is the accreditation bureau or the licensing bureau. What kind of advocacy do you provide, and what kind of advice can you give, even to someone like myself who has, attorneys who can't make it past the ethics board? Is there something they can do differently to have a better chance?
It's one of those things that you just have to keep plugging away at from different angles, but it's also constantly elevating what the current situation is showing, that it makes business sense to do this work, and continuing to do the research to demonstrate the data that challenges the misperceptions that folks have about working with returning citizens. But we have to get down to our lawmakers, and so to continue to sort of lobby sort of in that space to make those changes and apply pressure. And we try to use our, and not get too political, but use our institutional girth and our anchor institutional girth to kind of, well, come on, we can do this. My thing is working with employers. My thing is getting employers to do this work. However, you don't want to come out and be bold and say you do this. I don't care. Do it though. Just do it. You don't have to be on the front page of anything, but just make sure that you're doing this. And so trying to understand, so what are we dealing with? Are we dealing with someone that just doesn't know how to start?
Right.
So let's do that. Or are we dealing with someone that has an implicit issue with working with, and that's a whole nother approach and conversation, and starting to have that.
Yeah, and I neglected to tell you that I'm formerly incarcerated myself, as well as my attorney who's here, or was here.
Yes.
I take him with me everywhere I
Yes. Yeah. So it's a several prong approach, and and having a voice in a lot of these different spaces. So I'm not the only person at Hopkins that goes out. Our Senior Director for Talent Acquisition, Joe, goes out. Our former VP of HR, some folks from Government Affairs, our Diversity and Inclusion person, and making sure that we're on boards or in committees and organizations that are constantly hitting this nail on the head for folks. And so. Thank you.